Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Grossman Files. Hey, we got a great one for you today. Yes, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. I truly appreciate it. And what are we doing? Well, today we are carrying on with our series on the Bronx Sniper. Previously unknown series of crimes, serial snipings, which took place in the Morrisania section of the Bronx in 1970. And I never knew about this until Mike Lorenzo found this in the archives. And I'm willing to bet that nobody listening to this ever heard about it before either. And of course, that's what makes it so interesting. And of course, it's interesting in a twofold way. First of all, just as a series of crimes itself, serial sniping is incredibly rare. Okay. Out of serial killing, sniping is rare. And out of serial sniping, serial sniping is even rarer. It's in 1% of sniping. In other words, this series of attacks, which took place, I am saying that they started on July 16th and went until October of 1970. I'm saying that this set of attacks is something worthy of study. And of course, it's interesting on a second fold because we are theorizing speculatively, with education behind it, but speculatively theorizing. Was David Berkowitz the Bronx Sniper? There's some tantalizing clues as we say hello to the OG, Queen Ruby, Rodney, my man Nico's Moss, Chris, who's here, Dustin, and the gang's all here. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, I've been sitting on this case for a year, uh, not knowing quite what to do with it. And of course, it was the recent discovery of the previously unconnected and potentially unconnected July 16th sniper attack of 3-year-old Osvaldo Vega, which took place right around the corner from Berkowitz's dad's hardware store. That's what really got me back into it again. So, and I think you guys are into it too. The first installment where we first learned about the crimes of the Bronx Sniper is already up to 1,000 views almost, and the time that it took to get to 1,000 was very good for my recent analytics. I should say, because quite frankly, no one cares. Nobody cares anymore except for the hardcore heads, and that's cool because all I want is influence, not popularity. So, of course, what are we doing today? Well, we're taking it a step further, and we're doing something that really only we can do. It's not possible for any other Son of Sam researchers to do this because, well, first of all, they're still thinking extremely small-minded about the crimes. They're looking at July 76 to August 77 still. We're taking it back to 1970. We already officially took it back to April of 76. So we're, of course, thinking outside the box. We're pushing the envelope, and we're also adding other modalities to this. Today we're bringing in the whole notion of the sniper attacks amidst a dying neighborhood, the neighborhood of Morrisania in 1970 in the Bronx. Quite frankly, it was going down quick. And so today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about that. And I'm adding this into my thought process. Again, we're reasoning together. I'm hoping that this topic elicits conversation. other thoughts, other ideas, things that you catch that I didn't, and so on and so forth. And one of the things I want to bring into this is the whole notion of Nat's hardware store. Another thing I want to also eventually think about, although I don't know if we're going to have time to do this publicly, is the whole notion of Nat Berkowitz himself. Was he really a nice guy? Was he really a good father? Like what was the deal with this guy? What was his thought patterns? Did he harbor racist beliefs against blacks and Hispanics? If so, did those beliefs pass down onto Disco Dave, Sam Solo Berkowitz? Um, and then place that into the context of this neighborhood, which was really a stronghold Jewish neighborhood in the Bronx. And then rapidly in the late 1960s and early 1970s started to change to basically a ghetto. And Nat Berkowitz and David Berkowitz were smack dab in the middle of all this sociological change, this ferment, this urban unrest that was happening. What effect, if any, did it have on them? If David Berkowitz was the Bronx sniper, did these sociological forces have an influence on him? All good questions, in my opinion, as Nikos Moss so aptly writes. Got to be rare to have two of the same type of sniper from the same area. Exactly. And just to clarify, Nikos Moss, when you say from, I know what you mean, but Berkowitz was not from this area. He strictly worked in this area. He lived in Soundview. So let's take a little historical look at just some pictures and whatnot. We're going to look at the neighborhood. We'll look a little bit more at the crimes before we hit the New York Times article that really was a great encapsulation of this whole Bronx sniper affair that was going on. Because one thing you got to remember and realize is that this was a huge case. We had no idea it ever happened. Even during Son of Sam, nobody referred back to the Bronx sniper. It was never brought up. So we're the first people in history to try to connect these two events, and also we're the first people to talk about it. But this was huge enough to elicit a spread in the New York Times. The New York Times hardly even touched Son of Sam until it was a huge media sensation. But the New York Times was taking this series of sniper attacks, 6 in total. I'm adding a 7th to it, but that hasn't been officially tallied. And they wrote a spread on it in 1970, and they wrote a very, very interesting article. Journalism was a much finer craft back in the early 70s, and there were a lot of very, very great writers writing for newspapers that deserve to be esteemed. Of course, now it's a shit show. We all know, zero credibility. But be that as it may, we're going to talk about this article today. But let's take a look at some pictures first. So, of course, sniper heightens fear in Bronx, anxious Bronx neighborhood, and we have upon that juxtaposed the teenage David Berkowitz, who would have been 17 at the time of these attacks. 17? No. He couldn't have done it that early. Well, Dylan and Klebold and Harris and all the school people could do it that early. Even in 1977, in 1970, it was possible for kids to shoot people that early. He was in the auxiliary. He was a buff. He was into these things. Who the hell knows what was going on with this cat when he was 17? So, of course, we learned all about this case in the first show, and we're not going to rehash history, but there's certain things that I want to sort of emphasize from the first show that I think are important. So first is the location, and we're going to look at Google Earth in a minute. So the 5 previous victims, all of whom survived, were shot on 169th Street between Morris and Grant Avenue. So 169th Street between these two avenues was the kill zone. So we'll take a look a little bit more at the buildings in that area. And then also one of the things that I wanted to emphasize, is, as they did after the previous shootings, detectives searched all the buildings in the area yesterday and questioned residents. Well, first of all, those must be very interesting, very interesting DD5s to read. I would imagine actually that you FOIAing these might be very difficult because these were homicides. So who knows? I'll probably throw a FOIA in just for the hell of it, see if we can get some action going on this. This isn't going to be a crusade for me. All right, I'm putting this out there for everybody. Lorenzo wants to add in his thoughts, of course, which are much more important than mine because he was the person who found this. And then that's it. We're we're not going to go too nuts about this. So it's not going to be any files found, and by the time all that would come through, I'm going to be growing turmeric in Carolina, Puerto Rico. Hopefully far the hell away from all the craziness going on in our so-called world. All right. So one of the things I wanted to emphasize with this, of course, is that this wasn't a half-assed investigation. They were going around to all the buildings in the area and questioning residents. So how come no one was ever caught for this? How come this case languishes in obscurity 55 years later? And that, of course, also is one little notch in favor of this potentially being a stranger to the neighborhood. Notice I'm not saying David Berkowitz necessarily, although this is his criminology, which he later perfected up in a much up close and personal way in Son of Sam 6 years later, if he was the perp here. But they didn't find anyone. That means that there wasn't crazy Fred who just came back from Vietnam, who talked about shooting commies and seeing the VC everywhere on the corner of 169th and Grant. This wasn't a local kid taking pot shots out of his window. Nobody turned this person in. So let's take a look now at this area just so we can get a feel for it, because I'm not quite sure I'm going to get down there for a walk and talk. Things are rapidly coming to an end with the series, sad as I am to report on that, but it's true. And so we're going out with the Bronx sniper. So Rodney goes, no doubt he was some type of peeping Tom. Yo, I'll tell you something. When I first, Rodney, you're going to like this one. I'll report on this. I reported on this when I first did the series. When I first started in 2021, this lady called me because our series got real popular. And everybody and their mother was calling me with a Berkowitz story. But this lady called me from the East Bronx, from Co-op City. She grew up there. And she told me that when she was a teenager, that David Berkowitz came out of the reeds, because it's like a marshy area around there, and he didn't have any pants on. He was holding his junk, and he was like, stroking back and forth with his mouth open, and her and her friends kind of like freaked out and ran away. I don't know if that's true or not, but I did hear that story about Sam Solo Berkowitz. So Rodney, you may be on to something. And of course, he was known to roam. So here we are, 802 Melrose Avenue in the blue here. 375 East 159th Street, which was the site of a July 16th attack, which took place at most 3 weeks after David Berkowitz started working at his father's joint over here on this corner. A couple days later, in this building over here, a sniper shoots in and kills. Now, they called him a sniper. We'll see if Mike has Mike Lorenzo has any thoughts on this case. But the house I confirmed is this one right here. Okay. This one right, actually no, this one right here, right next to it. And if you go across the street, there's a building with an alleyway right here. Sniper's nest right here. Remember, one of you guys astutely pointed out in the comments section, Berkowitz sniped Harvey. He sniped Rocket at the Netto German Shepherd. He wanted to snipe Sam Carr. He was aiming for a human, and he got Harvey instead. Actually, today, I believe, April 21st, 1977. So this across the street is actually a perfect location for anybody with a sniping gun. I'm of the opinion that this was a sniper. It was reported as such, and there was 2 shots that came in. If it was a pot shot from the street, I don't think they would have hit the marks quite so accurately as these bullets did. But that's just my opinion. Hey, what's going on, Ralph? Dude, great to see you. As we ease on in to this presentation today on the Bronx Sniper. The Bronx Sniper of Morrisania of 1970. Now, the main bulk of the attacks started in August, and they started, I know it seems like a long distance, but it really isn't. This is a mile away at best. This is a 7-minute walk. For Berkowitz, who was known to roam, this was nothing. So they never gave any exact addresses where these attacks occurred. But the newspapers all say between, they say 169th Street between Morris and Grant Avenue. So before we do anything else, I'm going to straighten this out. Whoops. And we're going to just kind of analyze the landscape here. In the Iglesias article, it said that Margaret was shot at this intersection here, right as they started ascending a steep hill. This steep hill, you can easily see it right here. And of course, if you go down to this intersection, you can clearly see the incline, and the street here is flat, and then it inclines up. So that is the intersection. Again, let me just get back to north and south here. So south is south and north is north. And so let's take a look at the buildings in this area. I think we really have to include everything from here down to here, and then the buildings that perimeter onto 169th Street. And of course, there's a million places where a sniper could fire from. Even from this park, if that was there, it would be possible. So now let's go on to the street and let's see if a person could climb onto a fire escape, let's say. Very easy there in that building. Plus, as Nikozmas pointed out in our first show, you could just walk into most of these buildings. We're going to look at some pictures from this era. This is heaven, what you're seeing here compared to 1970. We're going to look at some pictures in a few minutes so we can really start placing these set of crimes into the era in which they took place and the sociology in which they took place. So here's 169th between Morris and Grant, Morris Avenue and 169th Street. So even right here, these fire escapes here could face that intersection. Whoops. And so on and so forth. So there's a gazillion places where a sniper could hide in these locations. All right, so I think that gave us a good indication of the lay of the land. Let's get back and let's take a look at some pictures from the era, and then we'll get into the So this is Rachel Ziegler. Whoops. This is her father from freaking Snow White. Those wide eyes. Whoops. Who finds those wide eyes attractive? I don't understand. And why does everybody have wide eyes nowadays? It's really weird. All of a sudden, everybody's eyes are wide. And usually it looks like this kid where one eye is like a little lower than other. Go take a look at that Ziegler from Snow White. I can't stand looking at her. In either case, that's a whole other issue. So this is 13 boy Morrisania, South Bronx, 1970. Now there's not that many known pictures of this area. You could Google image and you could see general pictures of the South Bronx. Absolute devastated shithole. But those images, those famous images of the South Bronx as devastated shithole are usually from later in the 70s and actually early into the early 80s. In 1970, when these incidents took place, this neighborhood was rapidly deteriorating, but it was still populated. It wasn't all burnt out. This is kind of a good picture showing that because the buildings still had life in them, but on the streets you had just abandoned cars from the Windsor. I don't even know what kind of car that is. This little kid here is like, yo, let me just set up a freaking lawn chair on the trunk of this car. Yeah, what's up? In the back, some dude smiling. Early graffiti. It's 1970, it says on that graffiti. Now, who knows? This could be a picture from 72, 73. But anyway, you get the point. This was kind of the neighborhood in which this was all going on. Somewhere in the Morrisania, sometime in the 70s. This is East 168th between Grand Concourse and Sheridan. So this is a few blocks away from the location of the shootings, but this generally is kind of what the neighborhood looked like back then. And then finally, before we get into today's New York Times article, there's just two things I wanted to show you. And I thought it would be interesting to juxtapose reportage from Son of Sam, right, 1977, and compare it to the reporting of the Bronx Sniper, and see if there were any similarities, like in terms of language, feel, themes, and so on and so forth. And I thought I found a couple, and these were the best right here. So of course, on the left, girl dies as mad sniper strikes. You would think that that's the Bronx Sniper, right? Because as you can see on the right, sniper slays girls, 16th, sixth victim in Bronx. But the one on the left is the Christine Freund shooting. And they actually identified these attacks as sniper attacks. This was from a British newspaper. So maybe that accounted for the difference in language. But these have a very similar feel to them. Okay. And then I found this from Valentina Suriani's neighborhood, which we're going to juxtapose onto the New York Times article that we're going to read next, the theme of tonight's show. But it kind of is the same deal. And now I know, of course, if you have shootings taking place in neighborhoods, there's going to be that human interest story. But again, these were very similar crimes in their nature, and the rarest of the rare, serial sniping attacks. And we have, in the case of the Bronx Sniper, Berkowitz close proximity to the scene of these crimes in the exact time period which he's there. It didn't happen before he came, and it stopped when he left. So killer stuns a neighborhood. So we're not going to go through this now, but they're all worried about their teenage daughters now. People are saying how we can't go on living like this. I don't see a soul walking on the street, which you can see right over here. On a day like this, you see them, people sitting in stoops. Uh, I'm really scared. All my friends are afraid to go out, and so on and so forth. So there were definitely similarities in tonality of the give me a second of the reporting. So let me please just get up here. Yep, right here. Let me share the screen. And we'll kind of read and analyze this article as we go. And even though I could read this in 5 minutes or less and then say goodbye to you, we don't have much time left together in this video series. We have a cutoff date of May 31st, unfortunately. And then I need to move on to other things. I'm going to YouTube from Puerto Rico. I'm going to do, I don't know whether I'm going to put the stuff on this channel or start a new channel, but it's going to be all about the new life of farming, getting over fears, getting out there and doing what really matters to you in this world, not worrying about what people think, or not worrying about even having a full plan. And so hopefully that will be fun, inspirational, and also quite beautiful, because I'm going to build one of the most gorgeous botanical gardens on the island of Puerto Rico that exists. That's the only dream and desire that I have in this world. Besides, of course, finding out who did this sniper attack. And if Berkowitz did it, he knows we know, or he knows that we think that he did it. And that's good enough for me. And maybe we can get some press on this. Maybe I can get this street of 169th and Morris and Grant named for Margaret Iglesias. That would be cool. Remember these victims. This was a huge deal, enough to make it into the New York Times. Sniper Heightens Fear in Anxious Bronx Area by Paul Montgomery. Even in the autumn sunlight, the block on 169th Street in the South Bronx has a look of profound exhaustion. 3/4 of the stores are boarded up. Groups of young men with sunken cheeks and vacant eyes hang just beyond the corners. Shoppers and schoolchildren move furtively on the littered sidewalks. In the last 8 weeks, 6 people, 5 of them women, have been shot by a nighttime sniper on 169th Street between Morris and Grant Avenues. The latest victim was 16-year-old Margaret Iglesias, who was on her way home from a party Saturday night and died before the ambulance came. Now, I just want to say one thing. She didn't just die. She was laying on the street, and whoever shot her pumped 2 more bullets into her body. The shootings have brought notoriety and terror to the block. But for those too old or too poor to flee, the events seem to be just another part of the neighborhood's long slide down to despair, to an existence where the next step might be living in caves and fighting off predators with rocks and torches. Dismay and gratitude. Evaristo Ramiro Torres, who came to the United States from Cuba 2 years ago, stood in the doorway of his photo studio on the block yesterday afternoon and talked rapidly in Spanish. Here in the night, it is horrible, horrible, he said. At 7, I close and go home. I don't come out anymore. It's bad, very bad. My business has declined to nothing. Mr. Ramiro took a deep breath. Don't get me wrong. I have much gratitude for this country, he said. They have given me liberty, and that is important. But I think the police should have more power. You never see a policeman around here. Bernardo Madera, a Puerto Rican friend who was listening, spoke up. Listen, you've got to understand. This place is full of tecatos, addicts, he said. You can see them over there now. At night, they come out and do their business. There are prostitutes, 17 years old, 14 years old. They don't let anybody go by. And the police, where the hell are the police? Down at the corner at La Chiquita Grocery, the proprietor and his wife were waiting on customers anxious to get home before nightfall. A victim speaks. There are tecatos around here like I never saw in my life, the man said. When you're ready to go to sleep, they come out to do the job. You can raise hell with the cops and they come once. Next day, the tecatos are back again. The man, who said he was afraid to give his name, said the presence of the sniper has added fear to the already fearsome neighborhood. My sister was supposed to start on a job Saturday, he said. After Saturday night, she didn't go. Who wants to come home on these streets after dark? So check that out. That's a Son of Sam line. This is exactly what people were saying during Son of Sam. The proprietor has owned the grocery store 2 months and has already been robbed. So we're going to see and hear from Leo Akerfeld, one of the shoe repair businesses on 169th, tried to sell it but could not find a buyer. And of course, we're going to hear from, well, we heard from Evaristo Ramiro Torres, who has a photo studio on the block. You never see a policeman around here. October 20th, 1970. So the last thing it said, has already been robbed twice. Last time they took my dog, he said. Why I pay taxes, I don't know. They are for nothing. I wish I could go away tomorrow from this corner. The sign in the dusty window of Leo Orthopedic Service says, slightly used shoes for sale. Inside, amid the clutter of 12 years of business on the block, Leo Akerfeld was doing one of the infrequent shoe repairs that comes his way these days. And of course, Leo Akerfeld is right there. He actually, that dude looks like Oriental to me. I don't understand how his name is Leo Akerfeld. This was an all Jewish neighborhood when I came, the shoemaker said. Now I estimate it's 20%, maybe less. Everybody who can has moved to Freedom Land, he said, referring to Co-op City, built on the site of Freedom Land in the northeast corner of the Bronx. I tried to sell this place, but nobody wants to buy it. Another holdover from the old days is Jack Klein, a 65-year-old barber who has been on the block 32 years. He stood looking through his window for customers that never came. Why I do this, I don't know, Mr. Klein said. I'm semi-retired, but comes the morning, I know I got a place to go. Maybe it's I'd go crazy if I didn't have some place to go. The liveliest place on the block is the Melody Lounge, a black bar on the corner of 169th and Morris Avenue. Louis Shaw, a 39-year-old customer, was talking about the sniping. It's got a lot of people around here scared, he said. You don't know where it's coming from next. Yo, that's the Son of Sam line right there. You don't know where it's coming from next. Mr. Shaw pointed to fresh bullet holes in a wooden post and a door inside the bar. Now, like last night, there was this little shootout in here, he said. 2 guys didn't agree about something. That you can see coming and get out of the way. But this sniping is something else. It must be some nuts got something against women. Yo, that's a Son of Sam line right there. The police said yesterday that there were no new developments in their search for the sniper. They have set up a telephone number, CY9-0500, for anyone having information about the case. A requiem mass for the slain girl would be offered today at 10 p.m. at St. Angela's Marici Church, 917 Morris Avenue. We're going to move now as soon as the funeral is over, said Martin Iglesias, the girl's father, in their apartment 2 blocks from 169th Street. We don't know where. We don't know how. We're just going to move. I don't know what happened, the father said. At 11, she called me and said she would be a little late from the party. At 11:30, they came and said she was dead. That's all I know. So that is the New York Times article. and of course, extremely poignant, informative, sociologically rich, and also helps us to to give us like more thoughts and more pieces of the puzzle that we can put into this whole notion of like, was Berkowitz the Bronx sniper? So let's see if there's anything going on in the chat that I need to read. So Chris says here, for every crime that Berkey got caught for, there'll be many more he got away with it. I don't know about many more, but definitely more. And we're not just talking about shootings necessarily. We're talking about arsons. Maybe he went out and sniped dogs just for the hell of it. Who the hell knows? Let's see here. So Ralph Dude always is good. Good point. Media claims that sniper attacks are often not really sniping in like a military sense of long range, stealthy precision shooting, and are just firearm attacks that aren't point blank. So Bakelite says, and the police never had a suspect. I have never found in the historical record an arrest or any suspect ever caught. Tecato's trying to cape the door, straight Bronx shit. All right, well, I think that's basically all we need to do today. I don't want to belabor the point. So hopefully in the next week or two, we'll get a whiteboard out of Mike out of this. He has his own thoughts independent of mine of everything that we're talking about. And of course, as the originator of this story, I'm definitely interested in what he comes up with. So I'll announce when that comes out in the next couple of weeks. And I think that's basically it. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for being with me, and we will see you on the next episode of The Grossman Files. Thank you very much.